Hello Internet, this video is the first of 3 videos on a brand new playlist on Scott's Garage called T90. In these 3 videos I will show you step by step how to completely restore your T90 transmission. Now this video is also on the Jeep Project playlist on Scott's Garage, where my almost 90-year-old father and I are doing a complete frame-off restoration of our 1946 Willys CJ2A. Now each video is about a half hour in length on the T90 and contain 2 major things to do so that over the 3 videos you will have completely rebuilt your T90 transmission. Now in the first video I'll show you how to install a new reverse idler gear and put the shaft in the correct location. I had to replace mine because the original idler gear on mine was all chewed up. Secondly, I'll show you how to build up what's referred to as the lower cluster gear assembly or the countershaft assembly. And by building it up, what I mean is inserting needle bearings onto a temporary shaft and then lowering that cluster gear to the very bottom of the case. And then I'll show you an easy way to insert the thrust washers. So that is video 1. Video 2 is all about the input shaft and building the input shaft and installing it. And then secondly, we'll be going back to the lower cluster gear assembly and basically lifting it up and then putting in the real shaft in place of the temporary shaft. And then finally, installing what's called the oil collector. And then in the third and final video, I will show you step by step how to assemble the main gear, including the synchronizer on that gear. And then finally, in that last video, just wrapping it up, putting the cap on, putting the throwout bearing on. And again, after 3 videos, you will have completely restored and rebuilt your T90 transmission. Now this video and the other 2 are also on the first time playlist on Scott's Garage, which means this is the first time that I have rebuilt a T90 transmission. Now you might be wondering, then why should I watch your videos, Scott, if this is the first time that you have done a T90? And the answer is this. I've been a backyard mechanic since before I was a teenager. I've worked on tons of cars. I've restored 3 classic vehicles, and this 1946 CJ2A is my 4th one. I am tenacious about figuring things out. I have a really good track record of doing things right the first time. And even though I'm not a Rick Stiver or a Metal Shaper or a Jeepster Man or a Red Eye Garage, I have watched all of their videos and I've learned from them. In addition, there are some things that as I watched their videos, I said, hey, there's an easier way of going about this. So I want to share with you my secrets, especially if you are a first timer in rebuilding a T90. I think you'll find my videos very valuable. Now let's back up in time a couple of weeks when I began this project. I want to thank Kaiser Willys Auto Supply for sponsoring the Jeep Project on Scott's Garage. And for this rebuild, I'll be using parts from kaiserwillys.com. By the way, you can go there and use my discount code SGarage and get 10% off your entire order by using that discount code, and it really helps support the Jeep Project. So I basically purchased all new gears and shafts from Kaiser Willys upon further inspection of the original ones. I want to do this right. I don't want to be driving down the street and the transmission not shift correctly. I also purchased a minor overhaul kit from Kaiser Willys. Contains all the gaskets and the bearings. Here are the main bearings. And then all the small parts, the needle bearings and all the snap rings. It's all right here in this kit. It also contains the brass synchronizer rings as well. Now, the only thing that I am not replacing really are the things here in the center, including the synchronizing gears. These are in really good shape. And so other than that, though, I'll be putting in new parts. Step 1 for me is putting in a new reverse idler gear and shaft. Now, a few things as we go forward, just for orientation on the T90. So you can read T90 there. This is the front of the transmission. So here's where the engine sits, and you have your clutch, and the main drive gear goes in here. This goes there. So again, just going forward, This is the front, this is the rear, and this reverse idler gear, it goes in the back. And as far as the gear itself, this is the exact orientation. So you can see that there are protrusions. The rear protrusion is not as much, and it's also flat. The gears are flat here. The front has a larger protrusion, and then the gears, the front part of the gears are rounded. So this gear will go just like this. I also want to show you the orientation on the back. So on this shaft there is a slit here, and there will be a piece of metal that will keep this in the right placement along with the other shaft, and it keeps the shafts from coming out. It like pins them in. So I'm going to change the camera angle and I'll show you precisely how this goes in. Okay, to show you how the lock plate goes in place with the gear and the slot that's there, I'm just flipping it on, the back side is up. So this is the rear of the transmission. There are two holes here for the shafts. The lower cluster gears go here, and this is the hole for the reverse idler. I'm not going to put the gear in yet, but please note that there's a slit right here, and there's also a flat part right here on the shaft. And what I have found just playing around with it is that if you look at this flat part, the top part, if this is the top right here, you want to position that at the 12 o'clock position. So roughly like that. And then the lock plate, once you line it up, is oriented correctly. So the other gear will fit here, and basically that's how you want it. So just keep that in mind. Again, just that top ridge where it flattens out at the 12 o'clock position. I'm going to put it back and we'll put the gear in. So for this rebuild, I'll be using the Lube Guard assembly goo, and it's made for this. So just be putting a little bit on the shaft. I'm also going to put some on the inside of where the bearing part of the gear is. Okay, so here's the correct orientation for the gear. Just kind of roughly line that up. Looks pretty close. Again, the orientation this way, 12 o'clock position. There it is. Gear spins. I'm just going to tap it slightly. I don't want to tap it too much at this point. And I have this soft mallet at my dad's garage. It's probably as old as the Jeep is, but it does a good job for just light taps. Okay, so the reverse idler gear is in place. It spins nicely. Step 2 for me is to work on the lower cluster gears, or the counter shaft. It's the same thing. Load up the needle bearings for this. Okay, I have the needle bearings laid out. So there's 4 groups of 22. I double check the count. They are accurate. And this is the spacer that goes in the center. And so basically this is going to go here, and then a washer, and then 22 needle bearings, and then a washer, 22 needle bearings. And I'll be using these hair ties. Then I bought these at Target for like $4. And I'll be using those to keep the needle bearings on. So this is the method I've chosen. Now, this dowel is 3/4 inch, and the spacer, there's a little bit of a gap there, and it kind of slides around easily. I don't want that. I want it to be as firm as possible. So I'm going to use the characteristics of the assembly goo. It's grease, but it also is meant to kind of stick things together. And so I'm actually going to grease up the wood dowel, and I think it'll create the spacer to be a little bit tighter. And also, as I'm sticking the needle bearings in, I just think it'll be just a tighter overall. So this is going to be my approach. Again, take it for what it's worth. To me, it makes sense. Yeah, it's much tighter. So first thing is washer. Okay, and then we'll put a rubber band on. And then I have found that by using this little pick here, it makes it a little bit easier. Just get underneath the rubber band. And then just put these in. It's kind of tedious. Does stick well though. Okay, that feels right. Just going to slide everything down a little bit. It's good, nice and sticky. I'll do more of the assembly glue over everything once I'm done. Just don't want anything sliding off at this point, and so far so good. Might even put a little bit more on there. Okay, rubber band. Pick. Some load the needle bearings directly into the center of the cluster gear, and even though I think that's perfectly fine, I think this way for me, first time, is easier and better, and perhaps it's overall a superior way to go about this. Okay, just one more. Gonna be pretty close to the end there. Okay, I'm going to press some more of this in there carefully. Again, just acting as some glue. Okay, safely keep that there. And let's go to the other side. Washer first, next to the spacer. Rubber band. Lift up the rubber band. Place the needle washers, needle bearings. Okay, one more. Feels right. Careful, I don't slide the back ones off. So again, washer, it's going to be tight here. I think I will put a little more assembly goo on there. All right. Last set. Three more. Okay, I'm going to push those in and put some more goo on them. Okay, there we go. It's time now to actually load the cluster gear with these needle bearings, and I'm going to do that. I'm just going to elevate it here using one of the gears so it's roughly level. And I have a razor blade, and I'm simply going to start pushing it in and cutting the rubber bands as I go. Okay, rubber band snaps off. Pull it out. Push it in. Okay, so far so good. Snap it. So far so good. Okay, got it. Last one. Okay. That's really good. I'm going to clean up here a little bit and we'll continue on. Now that I have the lower cluster assembly preloaded with the needle bearings on the dummy shaft, I want to talk now about the thrust washers. A lot of talk in other videos about the thrust washers and how they tend to migrate and different things. I want to talk about them, and then I want to show you my solution for this. I have not seen a video that addresses it like I have. I think this is the easiest, most logical way to insert the thrust washers. Now I'll be using a special camera. I did a complete review of this. This is actually an inspection camera. that was sent to me to Scott's Garage to preview things, and it's so cool. I can see and get into really tight places, and including inside the case here, and so I'll be switching over to video here. In fact, I'm just going to hit record now. Okay, so the camera is working properly now, the Tesla inspection camera, and I have it on the back side pointing towards the front side. Where my hand is really the front side of the transmission, and the larger thrust bearing, it goes right in here. I'm just going to kind of hold it in place. It basically goes like this, where the brass side is facing inward to the transmission. A couple things I want you to notice is that there's like a wedge shape right here, and also on the thrust bearing, and I have it on the opposite side now, so this is turned around, but you should see that there is a piece of the metal that's been divoted towards the silver side. So what I mean by that is, look at the side view. So there's the silver side, here's the brass side. So it's pushed from the brass side so that it's like just a little divot towards the silver side. And how that's supposed to work is that divot rests inside that wedge shape. So basically oil flows through these ridges, and it has to be this direction. There's a little bit of play, it can rotate a little bit, but it has to face this direction. And I'll talk more about that in a minute. Okay, there are two other thrust washers, and they're right here. And one of them fits, there's divots on that as well. I'll show you more closely how this fits onto the cluster assembly here in just a minute. But the other one is silver on both sides, and it fits on the opposite side. So I'm just going to turn this camera around. So the camera is now facing the back of the transmission. So this is the part that hooks onto the transfer case, and the lower cluster, the shaft goes through here. Likewise, you can see another wedge shape right here. And I'm pretty sure all this is for is that as oil is drawn up, it flows down, and it lubricates the shaft on the lower end. But there are two thrust washers that fit on here. And the one that fits closest to the case here is this one. It's all silver, and it also has a tab, if you can see that tab there. And it's basically, the tab is supposed to face upward, and it basically sticks up a little bit. And I'm kind of wondering too if there's a purpose for that, as far as the gear's not going to be able to go any further. And I'm not sure, but anyway, the manual says that little tab faces upward, and I don't think it matters like the other side. There's no divots in it, but it simply faces upward. Okay, so here's the other thrust washer, the smaller one. It too has some places where it's been divoted. So the brass part goes on the outside, and then the divot part, which is the silver part, goes on the inside. And you can see right here, the divots basically go here and here, and it just kind of makes it fit in there better. So we'll get some assembly lube, and we'll stick that on there. Now let me explain to you now how I'm going to drop the lower cluster into the case, and really my philosophy, how I think the thrust washers are supposed to be placed into it. We are set now to lower the lower gear assembly into the casement here. And I've watched so many videos of how to do this, and it greatly varies. I've done a couple of dry runs here, and what I've noticed is that it's really a tight fit. It's hard to get everything to fit down in place if you try to, using assembly grease or goo, put the second washer here and then A lot of people then take this one and they spin it around, and likewise they'll load this up with assembly goo, and they'll stick it on there, and basically like that. And then they're trying to lower that into the assembly, and it's too tight a fit. I don't think that's how you're supposed to do it. Here's what I found. Take it for what it's worth. Again, this is the first time, so I'm not an expert. If there are experts watching, be sure to add a comment below. But anyway, this logically makes sense to me as to the best way of going about this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to lower this only with this thrust washer on there, but I'm going to wait on the other two. I'm going to actually add those after I get it in place. And it's meant to simply be lowered down to the very bottom. I will work with getting the dummy shaft out and the real shaft in. That will actually be step 3 of my process. But for now, I simply want to get it into the case and lower it down. Okay, I'm ready to lower the cluster gear into place. The first thing I'm going to do is put just normal 3-1 oil, and I'm going to put some here. And also here. And also on the inside. Not using very much. Again, this is the front of the transmission, this is the rear of the transmission. The cluster gear, the big gear, faces towards the front, and it does fit down in there. So I'm simply going to lower it like so, get it in there, and then spin it around. And all I'm looking for is to drop it all the way to the bottom. There it is. Again, it goes in nicely. It's all the way at the bottom. It's the shaft is not lined up, but I'm not worried about that at this point. That'll be actually step 3, I believe. So what I'm going to do now is put in the bigger thrust washer, and I'm going to put some oil on it, likewise, on both sides. And I'm going to put the divot here so that basically I'm going to start on this side. And so that divot will line up with that wedge-shaped groove. And I'm simply going to just slide it into place. Okay, there it is. And then what I'm going to do is the final thrust bearing here. Likewise, I'm simply going to drop it into place, oil it up first. And I simply want that tab on top. And to get it to work, what I have to do is lift up a little bit. And then just push it in place. There it is. So it's there, it's in place. It's a lot better than struggling trying to force things in place. And again, I know that everything is lined up with the slot here, so that when I finally put the shaft in, I just have to lift up on the bearing slightly, and the real shaft should go into place just fine. Hey, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you got any value at all from this first video, please give me a like. It costs you nothing, but it's of great value to me. Again, if you need any parts for your T90 or any other Willys Jeep part, consider kaiserwillys.com. Use my discount code SGarage for 10% off your order, with the exception of tubs, tub kits, and tires. Now, we'll see you in the next video. In the next video, again, input shaft, putting in the real shaft in the lower cluster gear, and then correctly installing the oil collector.